Unit 4 test review. Number 1, we have to use the steps. What property justifies work between step 4 and step 5? So step 4 and 5 are right here. And I look at what is different between step 4 and step 5, and I see this right here. It's 1 times r, and that's going to equal r in the next line. So what property does this show? Identity property of multiplication. 1 times itself is itself. Number 2, we have to fill in the blanks. So again, I look out from one step to the next, what's happening. Well, the first one looks like we're distributing. Distributive property. So that was where 4 times 6 plus 3i equals 24 plus 12i. That's distributing. On the next, from 5i plus 24 plus 12i to 24 plus 5i plus 12i, looks like these two terms are switching places. So it goes from 5i plus 24 to 24 plus 5i. Switching spots, that's the commutative property. Commutative property. And then the last blank. And the last one looks like we're just putting parentheses around the 5i plus 12i. So here's where you get parentheses. And the parentheses, you're going to have associative property. So instead of, this is kind of a tricky one. What's happening is, order of operations, you have 24 plus 5i. You'd add those first, but it doesn't really make sense. So we add these two. So moving on. So that is 4a. 4b, we have to simplify each one of these. Think about square root of negative 20. Inside you have negative 20 is negative 1 times 20. The way you do that, square root of negative 1 is I. So from the square root of negative 1, that's going to come out as I. And then 20, we can break that down into prime factor trees. Okay, so we look at pairs. We have a pair of 2's, so that's going to come out also. And then the 5 doesn't have a pair, so that stays underneath. So the 5 stays underneath, doesn't have a pair. The 2's have a pair, that comes out. Square root of I, negative 1 is I. Let's rewrite that. So let's rewrite it. 2i squared of 5. Number 4, we have, think of that negative, just think of it as I. So we have I squared of 43. And if you try to break down 43, you can't. It's a prime number. So we just have I squared of 43. Number 5, same thing. You have I squared of 65. Try to break 65 down. That's 15 and 5. Made a mistake. 13 and 5. 13 and 5, those are prime numbers. Those are not pairs, so 65 is it. So we have I squared of 65. Number 6, square root of negative 100. So we have the negative 1 comes out as I, and then square root of 100 is 10. You can break it down with the prime factor trees if you like. No need, square root of 100 is pretty easy, 10. Number 7, you have 64. Square root of 64 is 8, and then the negative comes out as I, so 8i. Number 8, square root of negative 125. Square root of a negative, bring that out. And 125, break that down. 5 and 25. 5 is a prime number, 25 is not. 5 times 5. And then we have a pair of 5s. That's going to come out. There's this other 5 that's left over. It does not have a pair, so it stays underneath. So we have 5i square root of 5. Number 9, 200. Negative 200 square root. We have I square root of 200 to 100. 100 is 10 and 10. We can stop there because we have pairs. So we have 10i square root of 2. Square root of 2. C, which is equivalent to I to the 75th. I to the 75th, you have, I think about I squareds. I squared is -1, so I look at how many I squareds can I take out of I to the 75. So 75 divided by 2 is 37.5. Just take the whole number. So you have 2 times 37 is 74. We need 75 though. So what you do is you multiply by one more I, and that's 75th I. We'll look at what's underneath in the parentheses, I squared. I squared is -1 to the 37. And we have I left over. -1 to the 37th power, you can do that with your calculator. But any odd power, -1 to any odd power is -1. If it's an even power, it's going to be +1. We have -1 times I is -I, which is B. So we're going to incorporate this into every one of these problems. I to the third, how many I squareds can I get? Divide out of I to the third? Only 1. That gives me 2 total, and I need a third one. So that's I. You can put it to the first power if you'd like. Under parentheses, I squared is -1 to the first power. -1 to the first power is -1. -1 times I is -I. I to the 10th. You can get 5 out of that, so I squared is -1 to the 5th power. -1 to the 5th again, you can just do it in your calculator, equals -1. I to the 16th. How many I squareds can you get out of, divide out of 16? 8. And I squared is -1. -1 to the 8th power, even number with -1, end up being +1. I to the 34th. I squared to the 17th. -1 to the 17th, which is -1. I to the 64th. How many I squareds can I divide out? 32. And -1 to the 32nd power equals 1. I would make sure you know how to do other problems like I to the 65th or I to the 67th. Didn't really work on too many of those problems, but I to the 65th, how many, you can pause it right now so you can actually work this out. Let's see, that's 60, 32, that's 64. We need one more for 65, one more I. So we have -1 to the 32nd times I. Again, these are just extra problems that I'm doing because I think you might need more extra help. -1 to the 32nd power is 1 times I is I, so that would be I. Here we have I squared to the 33rd power. There's another I we need that's left over. I squared is -1 to the 33rd. And I along -1 to the 33rd is -1 times I is -I. Again, these two problems here where I just made them up on the fly. You don't have to do them if you don't want. If you wanted extra practice, go for it. Moving on to the last page. Here we have adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing complex numbers. Adding. Treat imaginary numbers just like they're variables. We have 1i plus 6i, that's 7i. 3i plus 1i is 4i. Put a parenthesis. Put these cursifies. 16, we have -1 minus 4 is -5. We have -8i minus another I is -9i. 17. We have -3. Well, hold on. Let's just, the thing that everybody forgets is to distribute the negatives. So I'm going to rewrite this with distributing the negatives so then I can drop the parentheses. Minus a -5 is a +5. Distribute to the -3i is a +3i. Now let's gather like terms. -3 plus 5. 2. 6i plus 3i is 9i. minus 8i, one I left. So 2 plus I. 18. 4i times, or 4i times negative 2 is negative 8i. 4i times negative 8i is a negative 32i squared. Anytime you have an I squared, you can simplify that. So this is like negative 8i minus 32. There's a multiplication between, so I squared is negative 1. So it's negative 32 times negative 1. So we have negative 8i plus 32. So negative 32 times negative 1 is positive 32. So we could write this with the real number first, 32, and then minus 8i. You could also write this negative 8i plus 32. Either way, doesn't really matter to me. Number 19, we have 5i times negative 2i. Those are multiplications. Multiply the coefficients. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. I times I is I to the third. Look that up. Let's break down that I to the third. We can do that off to the side. I to the third. We did that earlier today, or in this recording. But how many I squared is going to get out of 3? Just 1. That's only 2 though. 2 times 1 is 2, so I have to write 1 more. That's 3. I squared is negative 1. And I just put that in parentheses. No real need to. But negative 1 to the first power is negative 1. Times I is negative I. So I to the third equals negative I. Negative 10 times negative I is positive 10 I. So this is 10 I. Number 20. Get a multiplication between a multiplication, you've got to distribute. So we distribute the negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Negative 2 times I is negative 2i. Negative I times 4 is negative 4i. Negative I times I is negative I squared. Look for our like terms, anything we can reduce. Like terms, negative 2i minus 4i. First we'll write down the negative 8. Negative 2i minus 4i is minus negative 6i, minus 6i. I squared, negative 1. We have minus and negative 1 is plus 1. We still have like terms, negative 8 and 1. And that's negative 7 minus 6i. So negative 7 minus 6i should be your answer. 421. It's all about the sign of the imaginary, that if it's positive or negative. Well, this is positive, 6i, so we're going to multiply by 5 minus 6i. You only do this, multiply by the denominator, when you are multiplying with binomials. This is a binomial. Look back at your notes if you have questions. This is the last example on the notes. These were 4C notes. I know this isn't 4C on this page, but it's for your 4C notes. Multiply numerator and denominator by this. With all your binomials in parentheses. So we have 6i times 5, 30i. 6i times negative 6i is negative 36i squared. 5 times 5 on the denominator is 25. 5 times negative 6i is negative 30i. 6 times 5 is 30i. And 6i times negative 6i is negative 36i squared. Simplifying the numerator, only thing I can see is here is negative 1. That's multiplication in between, so we have 30i negative 36 times negative 1 is positive 36. In the denominator, we have negative 30i plus 30i, those cancel. Those cancel out. I squared, negative 1. We have negative 36 times negative 1 is positive 36 in the denominator, so we have 25 plus 36 is 61. We look then to see if we can reduce this. 30, 36, and 61. Are all of those divisible by the same number? In this case, no. So that is our final answer. 30i plus 36 divided by 61. So that's what you do with binomials. Monomials, like in 22. Monomial, one term in the denominator, it's just a monomial there, negative 4i. Remember, distinguish between one term, two terms, three terms, it's by additions and subtractions. So there's no addition or subtraction in that denominator, so it's one term. When you do this, to get rid of the I, multiply by I over I. Now what this does is it will get rid of the I in the denominator. I see 10 minus I is a binomial, so I'll put it in parentheses. Let's distribute this I. 10 times I is 10i, minus I times I is I squared. Denominator, negative 4i times I is negative 4i squared. Okay, let's look at simplifying. I squared is negative 1. So we have 10i minus negative 1. That's 10i. Minus some negatives plus. Then in the denominator, that's negative 1. Remember, it's multiplication between negative 4 times negative 1 is 4. Then look at 10, 1, and 4. Those three terms, anything that I can divide all of them by? No. So that is your final answer. Number 23, last one. Which number is equivalent? Let's get rid of these parentheses. The parentheses here, there's no need for it. You only need parentheses when you're multiplying or to a power. So there's no need for those parentheses. These parentheses, the next parentheses, they're there for a reason. It's like there's a negative 1 in front. Erase that. That's a little sloppy. So it's like there's a negative 1 here. A negative needs to be distributed, so it becomes minus 11 minus 13i. The other like terms, negative 6 minus 11 is negative 17. Negative I, that's like negative 1i. Plus 5i is 4i. Minus 13i is a negative 9i. Here we go, that's A. Any questions? After school, I'll be after school at 2519 tomorrow. Yeah, come with me, any questions? Not during class, though. I'll be taking the test right away. Thank you. Thank you.